Welcome to Beekeeping Today podcast presented by Bee Culture. Beekeeping Today podcast is your source for beekeeping news, information, and entertainment. I'm Jeff Ott.
And I'm Kim Flatham.
Hey, Jeff and Kim. Today's sponsor is Global Patties. They're a family-operated business that manufactures protein supplement patties for honeybees. It's a good time to think about honeybee nutrition. Feeding your hives protein supplement patties will ensure that they produce strong and healthy colonies by increasing brood production and overall honey flow. Now is a great time to consider what type of patty is right for your area and your honeybees. Global offers a variety of standard patties as well as custom patties to meet your needs. No matter where you are, Global is ready to serve you out of their manufacturing plants in Airdrie, Alberta, and in Butte, Montana, or from distribution depots across the continent. Visit them today at www.globalpatties.com.
Hey, thanks a lot, Global Patties. And hey, everybody, thanks for joining us. We definitely appreciate all of our sponsor support because without it, we wouldn't be here. And with that, thanks to Bee Culture Magazine for continuing their presenting sponsorship of this podcast. Bee Culture has been the magazine for American beekeeping since 1873. Subscribe to Bee Culture today. And while you're there, check out Bee Culture's Beekeeping Your First 3 Years, a quarterly magazine for beginning beekeepers. We also want to thank 2 Million Blossoms as sponsored this episode. 2 Million Blossoms is a quarterly magazine dedicated to protecting all pollinators. Learn more on our Season 2, Episode 9 with podcast editor and I guess co-host occasionally, Kirsten Trader, and from visiting www.2millionblossoms.com, and that is with a number 2. Hey, everybody, thanks again for joining us. We really appreciate you being here. With us today is Matt Mulica from Honeybee Health Coalition, but more on him in a few minutes. Hey, Kim, how's the springtime treating you?
Well, it's been nice the last few days, in the upper 60s, lower 70s, and then, of course, that storm that went across the southern U.S. Poked its head just far enough north that if you didn't have something nailed down with 3 nails, it blew away, and so I spent a day nailing things down. But yeah, the daffodils are up, and the spring bulbs are beginning to poke up, so we're on the short road to spring here, I think.
That's great. Yeah, the springtime is always nice to have it show up. I was watching the bees the other day, and they're bringing in pollen left and right, so that's really good to see. So, Kim, Honeybee Obscure sounds like it's coming along really well. You guys had a great episode last Thursday on swarms. What else is coming up?
Well, we've got a very esoteric list of topics we want to talk about, and I was talking to Jim earlier this morning trying to figure out which one we're going to do next, and we've got a list of 20 some things, and by the time you get to the third one you got 20 more. So we've got, well, I don't have the list in front of me, and it's so long that I can't remember it, but trust me, we've got some fun things coming up.
The shows are fun to listen to. They're short. They're 15 to 20 minutes long. The topics are spot on. So I'm looking forward to each one that you guys put out.
Yeah, Jim and I have a lot of fun doing these, and we kind of do them in chunks. We'll do 3 or 4 one day, and then take a week off and go do bees or tend to the garden or nail things down for the next storm. But that way we kind of get into a flow, and yeah, it's been fun.
Yeah, good job.
Oh, and Jeff, on our webpage, we ask for comments and letters and questions, and I understand you got a good one this week.
Yeah, we got a couple. So the first one is from Nathan in Lubbock, Texas. He says he's a weekly listener to the podcast, and he's reaching out because he had heard us asking how the Texas beekeepers fared in the recent that cold snap. It wasn't a snap, was it? It was really a cold apocalypse down there.
There you go. That's a good word.
And he writes, and I'll just read a couple things here from him. He says, in the Lubbock area, cotton is king. However, there's a few strawberry farmers woven in amongst us cotton fields that he pollinates, and he does use the strawberry pollination as a time to help augment his bees when the time of year when the food is scarce. The recent winter storm destroyed the entire strawberry crop in the area and he lost this year's rental income and the next few months of reliable food sources. So he says it's been a terrible loss for him. He lost 50% of his hives in the storm as well. So that's pretty tough tough going for the beekeepers down across the South.
It's got to be miserable down in that Texas. And then they got it again. After that first snap, they got another one. That's the one I'm just getting the edge of right now as we're talking. And it points out to the fact that the vulnerabilities that bees have in an environment like that, they can do okay, and the food they eat gets frozen or blown away or wrecked, or the beekeeper doesn't take care of business, and his bees suffer. It points out the what's the word I want here? It points out the vulnerabilities of bees and beekeepers when you because you can't control the environment. Relying on pollination as an income source is becoming more and more important to beekeepers because of the disastrous price of honey. When you lose that part of your income, it's an even bigger hole. And boy, my heart goes out to those guys down there. All those people who lost bees, lost crops, lost business. It's got to be tough.
Yeah, definitely. We have a second email here for the week is from Trudy S. She says here, I'll just read it here. Let me start off by saying I really enjoy the podcast and look forward to it every week. Thanks, Trudy. She writes, I always learn something. A suggestion for the podcast is Stephen Rapesky. He is the author of Swarm Essentials. She listened to him the other night at a Bee Club Zoom meeting, and he had a lot of good information. Thanks, Trudy. You know Stephen, don't you, Kim?
Yeah, we did some work at EAS together when he was part of that, and he and I were also on Mother Earth News Fairs for a while, making the rounds on that. He's a pest control person. Because of that, he's really good with dealing with urban beekeeping, and I hope we can get him on. That's a good idea. He's got a lot of tricks that he takes care of, and I want to say Philadelphia, big Pennsylvania city anyway, where he's at. And because of that, he has to deal with the police department. And he has to deal with all of the urban things that beekeepers go through. So he'd be a good one to have on. I'll try and get a hold of him.
All right. Well, thanks a lot, Trudy. And thanks, Nathan, for your emails. And thanks, everybody, for your emails that you send each week. We read each and every one of them, and we will read a few of them on the air. Hey, Kim, what have you pulled off your bookshelf for us this week?
Well, I'll tell you, Jeff, I got 3 new books arrived in the mail this week. I'm going to get to all 3 of them eventually. I've got one here by Ed Kobe, who writes for Bee Culture Magazine.
Oh, yes.
He writes the bottom board. And I've got one I got one called What's Inside a Flower. It's a kid's book, a young kid's book, and it is stunningly beautiful. And I don't know, hopefully we can put a picture of it or something on the webpage. It was well written. It's all about what's inside flowers. And I thought, well, a kid's book, what can I learn from this? Well, I learned something from this one. And then we've got one by Tammy Horn-Potter. And I'm excited about this one because I was involved in getting it put together. And we'll talk a lot more about that when we do the review next time. But be ready for this one. This is going to be a fun book to read.
Well, Tammy's been on the show. She wrote the book on the history of beekeeping in America, didn't she?
The history of women in beekeeping in America, right?
That's it. Yeah. Well, go ahead. I'm sorry to interrupt.
Okay.
You.
Well, this one kind of follows suit on this one. This is about a woman who worked for AI Root for her entire adult life in his beekeeping factory. And it's when she retired, she wrote an autobiography unknown to Mr. Root. And when Mr. Root retired, he wrote an autobiography unknown to her. Her name is Jane Cole. And what Tammy did was take Jane Cole's book and look at life in the factory and then compare it to Mr. Root's autobiography. And there'd be an event, a fire or a party or something, and the event would be described by Jane Cole from her perspective as an employee and by Mr. Root from his perspective as being the factory owner. Very different lifestyles, very different lives looking at the same events. It's really eye-opening book. So I'm looking forward to that one. But let me get back to Ed's book.
Yeah.
Ed has been writing the bottom board for 20-some years now.
He's also one of our regional beekeepers on our regional shows.
Exactly. He's been a sideline beekeeper since he's been writing this. He lives in Colorado, and he took a collection of his one-page articles and Northern Bee Books over in the UK, put it into a book, and I just got my copy. Let me read you the review that's going to be in Bee Culture coming up. So Ed Colby is a sideline beekeeper living in Colorado who writes a single-page column for Bee Culture magazine every month. The title is The Bottom Board because it's at the very last page of the magazine, the bottom, as it were. This book is a collection of some of the best of Ed's bottom board articles, these drawn from his earlier days of contributing. The topics cover not only his beekeeping escapades, but adventures, mishaps, slips, falls, bounces, and friends he's experienced over all those years, and even some from before. During all this, Ed's day job for over 40 years was working for the Aspen Mountain Ski Patrol, which adds to the long list of people he's met, near misses he's had, and yet another set of adventures he's experienced. Ed gets around a lot. Some of these are about his closest people. Neighbor commercial beekeeper Paul, and the secret handshake. Bee Club officer Tina, guest speaker Marla, his gal Marilyn, professional athlete Terry, among many of the people that he writes about. And he talks about places he's been that his bees have taken him to the Apomondia meetings in the Ukraine and Canada, to Mexican bees and scorpions in Mexico and Brazil, where he spent some of his growing up time. And even his trip to Medina to talk to my bee club, relating all the train adventures along the way. He and Marilyn spent like 4 days getting here on a train, so they had a lot of adventures. That was a fun series of articles. His beekeeping experiences include stories about selling honey, sending his bees to the almonds, collecting pollen, and trying to keep his bees alive when they are dying from 1,000 cuts. He has truck problems, spectacular views of his Rocky Mountains, and interesting neighbors. And of course, all of those stories are in one way or another related to his little darlings, is how he refers to his bees. The best thing about this book is that each of these stories is only a couple of pages long, a whole story on only 2 pages. You can pick it up and read one of these short masterpieces before you finish breakfast and do it again tomorrow. Ed's style is easy to read, organized, and always finishes with a lesson earned, learned, or commented on just because. Ed was buried in an avalanche once on his ski patrol job, and he nearly died. It nearly killed him. That's when he learned that life is a gift. And early in life, his father told him to follow his heart in life. So Ed took the road less traveled, a beekeeper's life. And he's never looked back. And we're lucky he took notes.
Excellent. Sounds like a wonderful book.
It is. It's fun to read.
We'll put a link to that in the show notes.
Good.
All right. Well, first, a quick word from Strong Microbials and our interview with Matt Mulica from the Honeybee Health Coalition.
Hello, beekeepers. Your honeybees face a lot of challenges out there. Unbalanced food sources from monoculture crops, holding yards, drought, food shortages, antibiotics, pesticides, and pathogens like chalk brood. To overcome these challenges, your bees need the multiple bacteria that are in all nectars, pollens, and the environment. These bacteria aid honeybees' digestion and improve your honeybees' response and resilience to pesticides. Now you can help improve your honey colony health with a quick, easy, and safe-to-use product. Strong Microbials Super DFM Honeybee uses naturally occurring bacteria to restore the healthy gut biome of your honeybees. Check them out today at www.strongmicrobials.com.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. With us now is Matt Mulica, and he is with the Honeybee Health Coalition and is going to talk to us about their programs and everything to do. Welcome, Matt.
Hi, Jeff. Hi, Kim.
Good to talk to you again, Matt.
And thanks for having me on.
You bet. The Honeybee Health Coalition's been around a while. I know most beekeepers have probably heard about the Honeybee Health Coalition, but can you just kind of give us a high-level view of what is the Honeybee Health Coalition? How did it get its start?
Yeah, so I work for an organization called the Keystone Policy Center. So I do a lot of work in agricultural and natural resources. There's a lot of great work that's been going on in honeybee health and pollinator health for years and years. pollinator partnership, for example. I mean, it's been around 20 years. But there was this, through a lot of our work at Keystone, we had the opportunity to interact with a lot of, crop associations and businesses that support agriculture. And we were approached to say, is there a way that we can have a group convened to come together to talk about bees and agriculture? And so that's really where our lane is, where our niche is we bring together the beekeepers, and that's their national associations and regional associations, with the grower associations, with the researchers and government agencies, agribusiness, conservation groups, and other NGOs, and then also consumer brands. So we have, I think, 50 organizations and entities, agencies, et cetera, right now that are all working together on improving bee health. So we work in, really the three main stressors of, bee health decline, which is, as we frame them, forage and nutrition, crop pesticides, and hive management. So we're working on all of those things, somewhat equally, knowing that this is a multifactorial problem and that you can't just attack one angle, that you have to really attack all of those together in order to have any kind of positive impact or yardage.
Well, there's a lot in that statement, and that sounds like a great approach or a great thing that you're doing. So what is the mission? Is it?
Yeah, we don't have boots on the ground, right? So we're not able to be everywhere, but so we really do create educational materials, taking things that are complicated, like varroa control and mitigating adverse impacts from pesticides, and make that simple for our users. So our main audience for the materials that we create are growers, our farmers, and beekeepers. Our mission to collaboratively implement solutions that will help to achieve a healthy population of honeybees and native and managed pollinators in the context of productive ag systems and thriving ecosystems. So that's really kind of a mouthful, but really we're working on it all. We're working on, how do you create healthy hives, productive crops, and we really believe you can have it all. It's not a zero-sum game, that you can have both of those things existing in the same agricultural system.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. You have to.
Mm-hmm.
Matt, you said you don't have boots on the ground, but I encourage everybody to take a look at your webpage, because there you have some incredible information. Just a whole day's worth of videos that you can watch. You've had people put together on how, if it's broke, how to fix it, or how to not get it broken in the first place. Are you going to continue to add to that library of how-tos?
Yes, we are constantly creating new guidance and documents and help clarify different points. And it's also not just creating documents and videos and infographics. We're also working on some research, and I can get into this a little bit later in more detail, but we're also trying to find the next varroa side, knowing that Amitraz is going to hold on for as long as it can, but we're already seeing cracks in the resistance armor, if you will. And so we're also working with scientists in actually 3 different countries in a big team to develop new varroicides.
Where do you get your funding for doing all of this? I know a lot of it comes from, on your webpage, there's a list of, 100 groups that belong to you, and I'm sure some of it comes from there, but I see Project Apis M is on that list, and that's what they do a lot of is funding. So when you have a project, the one you just mentioned, looking for a new miticide, how do you approach a funder, someone who wants to contribute? How do you approach them with the project that you want funded?
Sure. So what's listed on our website are our about 50 members. And so everyone gives what they can. There's no pay to play. If you're interested and it makes sense, it's for us to have you as a member, then you can become a member of the Honey Bee Health Coalition. And 75% of our members, of those 50 entities, contribute to our funding. And so, obviously, like if you're university or, the Environmental Protection Agency, you don't fund us because you can't. It's not how it works. So that's the 25%. But otherwise, everyone gives what they can. And that is the money that keeps us going. For special projects, we will go out to various funders. The new miticide work has been funded by the Foundation for Food and Ag Research for the last 3 years. Project APSM certainly funds us for special projects. The Healthy Hives 2020 initiative provided some funding, but we generally have some base funding that takes care of the vast majority of our initiatives. And then we have special projects where we'll go out to and ask for different grants.
So you've got, and that's where I was going. You're going to fund a project with a grant. You're going to make a grant available to scientists who think that they can solve the problem or work on finding the answer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay. That's pretty typical then.
But Project IPSM is really the group that funds research.
Yeah,
and we are not a research organization. We do that one project because it's really important, and it's within our wheelhouse, and we've been working on it for 4 years now. We generally take the research and the information and make it digestible to our audience. I mean, if you could put it in a sentence, I really think that's what we do best.
Well, when you look at the videos that you put out, you certainly do it well.
Thanks.
Yeah. I see that on that list, there's a lot of beekeeping associations also, which is good. You're getting input from both or from all sides of honeybee health or forage and nutrition. You've got Pheasants Forever. They certainly can benefit from the things that are going on here. And the other thing that I'm wondering about is you mentioned the people who don't contribute funds, and they're primarily government agencies. How much of a role do you've got? USDA, ARS, Office of Pest Management, EPA. You get a lot of people that are government oriented. What role do they play in this?
They play a huge role. So as we are developing guidance, we have to make sure that it's in line with the label and the risk assessment process, and that what we're putting out is what is legal, and we understand the regulations. And so the EPA, USDA, ARS, Office of Pest Management Policy, they all play a really big role in helping us develop these materials.
And I see you've got input from the counterparts in Canada too. So it's a North American operation rather than just U.S. That's good to see.
Yeah, U.S. and Canada for the most part. But, a lot of our materials are applicable for the entire world, especially when it comes to varroa. Varroa doesn't care about borders.
You got that right.
Yeah, we found out.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, Matt, then I guess the question is, you've got these three, what do you want to call them? Categories, I guess. You got these three categories. Is there somebody that's kind of in charge of each one of these?
Yeah, who's setting the strategic direction for the programs or of the Honeybee Health Coalition?
We are incredibly democratic. There's sectors, and so each sector will select 2 members to be on the steering committee, and then if there's any big decisions, then the steering committee, which is I think 15 people, we also have some at-large seats, though that they set the strategic direction, but those are really driven by the members. So we call them working groups, and we have 3 of them. If you have an idea and you bring it before the working group, then and everyone agrees, then we'll do it. So, for example, someone says, you know what we need? We need a list of every treatment that is currently available for all pests and disease on a single piece of paper, one side. Well, so we did it, right? We brought together the experts, and we developed this information. And amazingly, that's not a simple task. You think that'd be really easy, but so if you go on our website, you can find that. It's called Approved Pesticides and Medications. So that's on there. So everything that's legal listed by category for hive pests. Or someone said, there's this new veterinary feed directive, and it's really confusing for veterinarians who never thought to be prescribing things for bees. We need something on fowl brood that talks that's for beekeepers, but it's also for veterinarians. And so we did it, right? So we're really, really democratic in how we decide. And also these people, over the course of, I guess, 6-7 years now, we've really built relationships, and these people know each other really well. All of our members have grown, in their understanding of each other's issues that they have to deal with. And so everyone just kind of rolls up their sleeve and we develop these materials together.
How often do the groups meet?
For the longest time, we met every month, and then every other month. And we were finding that, a lot of the work was being done in subgroups. So when you have to roll up your sleeves, you don't do it in the working group. You do it in subgroups of who are a subgroup of the willing. You ask for volunteers. Who wants to help develop this stuff? And people raise their hands, and there's never a shortage of people raising their hands. So then the working groups were a place for us to, give everyone else who's not in the various work streams an update on what was happening. And we'd also hear presentations on new and emerging issues in science. And we've actually just this year switched to a new model, which we're calling cross-sector dialogues. So we're doing deep dives on individual topics related to forage and nutrition, hive management, and crop pesticides. We're doing 20-30 interviews with experts from all over the country and the world, and then putting together a half-day dialogue for the entire Honeybee Health Coalition, and then having the hopefully initiatives and actions coming out of those. So we're kind of an evolving organization as we see the need to really dive more deeply. I guess you could say we picked a lot of the low-hanging fruit, and now we're having to really dig into the details more deeply to see where else we can make an impact.
Interesting pun there, Matt.
I like the work being done by the subgroups. It sounds like the 80-20 rule that 80% of the work's done by 20% of the people.
Yeah, and I'm a facilitator. I knew nothing about bee health and bees, say 7-8 years ago, and now I know just enough to know how little I know.
Yeah.
And so I really I bring together the experts, and I glean a little bit of information here and there, but really it's them who are creating these materials.
Yeah, they're great materials too.
Well, we're going to, working with you, we're going to bring in over the next few weeks people who are going to address more specifically each of these three categories: the work that's been done, the work that's going to be done, or being done and going to be done. So we can follow up with them on some of this, but it's certainly given me enough. You've given me enough information to ask a lot of questions when they come here, I guess, which is good, because a lot of times you don't know the question to ask. You don't find out the answer. So
You mentioned the three different main focuses of the Honeybee Health Coalition: crop pesticides, forage and nutrition, and hive management. Can you talk a little bit about each one of those areas?
Sure.
What are the main programs? Yeah. And we'll go into deep dives with those representatives, but kind of give our listeners a preview of what they'll hear.
Sure. Where would you like to start?
Let's start with crop pesticides.
Okay. So for crop pesticides, we have the grower associations around the table. So the Almond Board, the National Corn Growers, the United Soybean Board, Florida Fruit and Vegetable, the wheat growers in U.S. and Canada, and canola. I think I mentioned almonds, the Almond Board of California. I'm probably missing some, but those folks want guidance for their growers on how do you protect pollinators. So we've developed best management practices that follow these crops from planting to harvest, and lay out the times when bees and other native pollinators are at most risk, and what to do about it. And how do you mitigate that risk? How do you make sure that the dust from seed treatments aren't wafting and killing bees? How do you make sure that you're protecting, adjacent forage from herbicides. And how and where do you plant forage on your non-crop areas or marginal acres? So those are some information that we've developed for growers, specifically for corn, canola, and soybeans, and we're going to continue doing that for other crops. We've also developed a module, CEU, continuing education unit for pesticide applicators, advisors, and consultants. So every 3 years, if you want to lay down pesticides on ag land, you have to be certified. And so you can take our unit, our credit, and have that count toward your recertification. And we also, just kind of bring together information for growers in a variety of ways. I also go to ag trade shows and just, talk, just like I'm talking with you all, I'll talk with farming programs about this kind of stuff and how they can, have the main thrust of this. How do you have healthy bees and healthy crops? Yeah. And so we just talk to all of our audiences about those.
I bet those can be lively meetings at times.
Yeah. Yep, they are. I think like anything, there's the early adopters to the laggards, and the more early adopters you can get, that they'll pull the rest of the group along. So, they're always good meetings, but people love, and especially farmers love talking about bees and pollinators, and they're incredibly receptive audience to doing better and making sure that they're protecting bees.
That's good to hear.
How about the forage and nutrition
Sure.
angle? How does that work?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's one of the places that we've had projects on the ground. And so a lot of what the Forage and Nutrition Group does is work with, work together to provide recommendations to federal agencies on how do you improve your conservation programs. So there's something called the CRP, the Conservation Reserve Program, and other federal programs that, have been around for a long time. And so the Honeybee Health Coalition develops letters and guidance and recommendations to those agencies to improve those programs. We also, really support the work of the Bee and Butterfly Habitat Fund, for example, who is putting forage on the ground for all over the U.S. And then we have something called the Bee Integrated Demonstration Project. And so, we developed all of this guidance for these 3 topics over the course of years. And we thought suggested, well, what happens if you put these all on the same landscape? What happens if you put all of your BMPs and follow the MP3s, the Managed Pollinator Protection Plans that each state has, put forage on the ground and then follow the varroa guidance that we put out. What happens if you put that all on one farmscape and have the beekeeper and grower work together? So for the last 3 years in North Dakota, we've had 6 grower beekeeper pairs, and they'll actually walk a mile in each other's shoes. So they'll go onto each other's, onto each other's operations and work for, a week or 5 days and see what they have to do, so that they get an understanding of what it takes to have a successful business, if you're a beekeeper or a farmer. And then we have these practices that we put on the ground. And in these 6 locations, we have a control, like do everything as you used to do it, and then do everything according to how we would ask you to do it. And then we measured the success of this. Like, is the sum of the parts greater than the individual recommendations? And so we measured that, and sure enough, we're finding stronger hives and stronger crops. But I think the surprising thing is just that when beekeepers and growers communicate more, they grow that relationship and they build their understanding, that they have a better relationship, and they enjoy or know about each other more, so that they can just continue to work together in a positive way.
I've seen some of those reports earlier. It's a very interesting project. You hit it right. Walk a mile in my shoes. How hard is it to get the government to make a change? You mentioned the CRP program, but there's others that are out there too. Are they pretty reasonable?
Yeah, they are reasonable. You have to navigate what decisions are made at the state level and what decisions are made at the federal level. Government does move slow, and it's a big boat to turn. And so I would say that they're really receptive, and there's also a lot of things that they're seeing the whole picture and the whole elephant, and so whereas something might make total sense, they say, well, you should also consider this and this, and so we've got a really collaborative relationship with those federal agencies.
Well, that's good to hear. A big boat to turn. You kind of hit the nail on the head of that one. The last one then is your hive management. And I know you've got a lot of BMP videos on your webpage and developing, still continuing to develop. Who are you working with those?
Sure. Well, it's really all of the members on our list. We work with all of them on developing our materials, and especially the beekeepers when it comes to varroa management, and also the researchers and government agencies, and also really everyone. So let me tell you the story. So as this coalition began, we really identified within that working group of hive management that varroa was the most invasive, deadly pest, right? The thing that's the if you solve one thing, start with varroa. And so we started by creating the Tools for Varroa Management Guide. And this is a document that walks through, integrated pest management, monitoring, and then treatment. So if you're above threshold, what are the cultural, chemical, and natural controls that you can do and how to rotate through them. So we created that guide, and that's now in its 7th edition. And, as I'm out at these beekeeping shows, people said, it's just still too complicated. Can you create some videos? And so we created 12 videos. You can find all this stuff for free on our website. And those videos go through just what I just said, the integrated pest management, monitoring, and treatment. And then folks said, it's still really complicated. What else can we do? And so we created a decision support tool. So if you go to the website, you click on this button, and it launches this tool that asks you 5 questions. And out the other side of that comes your varroa control techniques. And off the top of my head, the questions are you open to synthetic and natural products or just natural products? Do you have honey supers on? Is brood present? What stage of the life cycle is your hive in? Is it increasing, decreasing, or dormant, or peaking or dormant? So that's looking at the life cycle of the hive. And then you also have to indicate what the temperature is.
You start with, are you at threshold or above threshold?
And yes, that's the first question. Yeah. Yep, right, exactly. And so then you get your options. So that's our decision support tool. So that really formed the foundation of our varroa work. And then since then, we've added on a number of things. We've added an 80-page guide. I call it the first 80 pages of beekeeping. And that's really interesting. That goes through, if you're starting off, what do you need to know? It's really got great pictures and graphics and text, and then resources. Like if you want to learn more, where do you go? And so you can check that out.
So Matt, I was going to just jump in here real quick, and I know it's still too early to know much details, but I imagine you're already planning how you're going to update that guide for the use of oxalic acid if and when or as the new ruling and label laws are rolled out. Yeah,
certainly. Yeah, it needs to be updated now. Again, a lot of the products, they've come out with their next generation of them. We have to just make sure that those are updated. So that's actually in process now, and will include the new information oxalic and honey supers. Yeah. So, but then all through all this, the other thing that we recognized in the beginning or after a couple of years was, geez, the current tools that beekeepers have at their disposal, resistance is bound to happen. And if we don't have, a pipeline of new miticides, then beekeepers could get left flat-footed. So for the last 4 years, as I've said, we're working on developing new miticides. And then we're also doing some work for commercial beekeepers and highlighting, case studies of beekeepers who are not using consistent use of off-label amitraz. So showing that on a large scale, it can be done. You can, not rely on tactic and be a successful, financially viable commercial beekeeper.
That's interesting. That's very interesting, promising indeed. What have we missed? What is the Honeybee Health Coalition doing that we haven't touched on here? I know we're going to go into detail on all of these things with some of your people later on, but from the 30,000-foot perspective, what have we missed? Anything?
I think it's the intangibles. It's these groups that have traditionally not worked together, working together from their, from a national office. We're talking about the American Beekeeping Federation and national corn growers and American honey producers sitting down together and talking, where I think that, hadn't really happened before. And there were some really hard conversations, especially at the beginning. And so I think developing those relationships and learning how to work together, it's not about, sometimes the hardest thing to do is figure out what to do, and for both beekeepers and growers, that will improve the situation. So to me, I think that's from the 30,000-foot view, building those relationships and understanding from between these 50 organizations has been an incredible thing to watch and be a part of.
Yeah. It sounds like you play referee every once in a while also.
Yeah. I'm a mediator by trade. So we develop collaborative, groups, and some of that is mediation and a lot of it's facilitation. But yeah, we certainly, have to, we're all humans, right? So we have to always just keep that front and center.
Well, it's good training that comes in handy in this at times, I'm sure, like Kim said.
Mm-hmm.
Well, very good. So I want to invite our listeners to go out to the Honeybee Health Coalition website, look at the different programs, and we're going to focus in upcoming episodes on crop pesticides, forage and nutrition, and hive management, which includes hive pests and pathogens. Go through those areas on the website and email us questions at Beekeeping Today podcast, or submit them directly from our website. And we'll ask those questions of the facilitator as they come on for that part of the program. So just kind of have a little bit of feedback and back and forth for the folks from Honeybee Health Coalition. I think it'll make for a informative show for folks.
Yeah, that'd be great. And we're on Facebook, and if you're also on there, check us out.
Excellent. We'll have the links and handles and hashtags and whatever else is available. We'll have those in the show notes for today's show. Well, thanks a lot, Matt. Really appreciate you being on the show. Enjoyed working with you, and looking forward to having the upcoming episodes focus on the programs of Honeybee Health Coalition.
Well, thanks for all you two do. We really appreciate it, and you guys really amplify these messages and make for better beekeepers. So important that we're all just marching in the same direction and using good information. And I think that's what the Honeybee Health Coalition does. Is we develop good, high quality, vetted information that you can trust.
No doubt about it. I guess a thank you is in order here.
Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. What else, Jeff?
That's it. Thanks a lot, Matt. We'll be talking to you soon.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
Have a great day.
I'm really glad we were able to get Matt on the show. The work the Honeybee Health Coalition is doing is really, really good.
It is, and it's been under promoted. I think that may be the right term for it. Under promoted. Yeah. The people that are working it are the doers, the people with feet on the ground and at the table, and they're not shouting it from the rooftops. And I hope this helps get some of the word out. The thing that I found most interesting in all of this, I mean, the information they're producing and making it available to anybody that wants it for free, is the fact that they managed to get all of these people to sit at the same table at the same time and without a lot of shouting, figure out what's wrong and how to make it better.
I think you hit it right on the head, and we've both been meetings one place or another where, I'm sure the first meeting was a lot louder and a lot less got accomplished than they do now.
A rumor that came out of that, somebody I was talking to said the first meeting everybody sat at the table with their arms crossed, and you know what that means. So I can just visualize all of these people. What am I doing here? But
yeah,
boy, it seems to have worked out really well. Matt and his group, the management group, seem to have done. I asked if he'd play and referee a lot, and he said, "Well, mediation is my trade, and it seems to have paid off."
Yeah, I think he's perfectly suited for that role and found himself in a good place. Yeah, like we were talking before, the fact that they were able to get the pesticide people, the beekeepers, and the growers all together and actually working in a common direction is fabulous.
Yep. I'm looking forward to talking to their specialists.
And everybody, we're serious. Go to their website, look at the 3 different programs that we're focusing on in upcoming shows, look at the material, and send us some questions for our guests.
Take a look at those group of videos and see, and the information made available, what questions didn't they answer for you? And do you have something that they didn't do that you want to know about, or the other way around? Did they do something that you wonder why? So, take a look and then send us the questions.
Looking forward to that show, and I hope our listeners are too.
That about wraps it up, Jeff. Are we done?
Yeah, it does. Hey, before we go, folks, I want to encourage you to rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts wherever you download and stream the show. Your vote helps other beekeepers find us quicker. Even better, write a review and let other beekeepers looking for our podcast know what you'd like. You can get there directly from our website by clicking on reviews along the top of any page. Hey, I also want to let you know, if you are on Apple Podcasts, they are no longer doing subscribe to a podcast. They're saying follow us podcast. So that's a little change they're making. You might see that. As always, we thank Bee Culture, the magazine for American beekeeping, for their continued support of Beekeeping Today podcast. We want to thank our regular episode sponsor, Global Patties. Check them out at www.globalpatties.com. We also want to thank Strong Microbials for their support of this podcast. Check out their probiotic line at www.strongmicrobials.com. It's been fun having them support the show for the last several months. And finally, and most importantly, we want to thank you, the Beekeeping Today podcast listener, for joining us on this show. Feel free to send us questions and comments at questions@beekeepingtodaypodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. Anything else, Kim?
I think that about wraps it up, Jeff.
All right. Thanks a lot.
Yep. Take care.